Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. Without further ado, let's talk about what we're here to talk about, which is Normal People by Sally Rooney. It's one of my favorite novels of this year that I've read, and this year is coming to a close and I've read quite a few books this year, so you know that this is a good book because it's one of the contenders. It's by Sally Rooney, one of my favorite authors, all-time favorite authors. And so let's get started. The book opens with Marianne divulging the results of their mock exams to Connell's mother. The term mock exams really threw me off because I did a lot of mock exams for my A-levels and O-levels, and trust me, that was not a great time for me. No, teenage years were the trenches for me. A key part of Connell's personality that we will get into as we read the book is that he's a shy character and he dodges praise. And when Marianne is saying that Connell did really well in his mock exams, something he should be proud of, he really, like, straight off the bat, like, dodges that praise. In school, Marianne and Connell pretend not to know each other. Connell's mother works for Marianne's family as a cleaner. So that's how they actually know each other, and that's how they interact together, because Connell comes after school every day to pick up his mother from work. And so Marianne and Connell get to interact. But Marianne doesn't say hi or acknowledge Connell in school, so she's aware of where her social standing is and where Connell's social standing is. That is to say, because Marianne has no friends, she spends most of her time reading her novel, which honestly, she's a cool girl. As Eric from Sex Education said, she's a cool girl before anyone knows she's a cool girl. She's ahead of the curve. Connell mentions offhand that Marianne has like a mental illness or something, like it's a bad thing, and I'm like, literally so many people have a mental illness, and literally I do too. Like, the stigma of it in like young teenage boys especially is so weird to read about, because I was just like, listen, she's not special, I have it too. Marianne and Connell are talking to each other one day, and then they talk about how Connell's grown-ass teacher, yes, you heard that right, a grown-ass person is hitting on Connell, and people think Connell is feeding into it because he's such a legend. Honestly, like, what is that? Like, because if that was happening to a girl, I'm sure people would be more like, that's wrong. But when it's a guy, it's like he's like a fucking legend. Like, I don't understand, but I guess it's the patriarchy. He shouldn't even be in a position where he could be playing into it or not, because that's just inappropriate behavior and inappropriate attention altogether. There's rumors about Marianne in school, and honestly, like, who hasn't had rumors about them sometime or the other in school, in life? Like, it's such a sticky situation for her, and I think it's because she doesn't give access to people of her life, so she's kind of a mystery, and you know, kids don't know how to handle that, so they just lay it onto her like she's weird. And yeah, you know what? Kids can be horrible, and that's a prime example of that situation right there. One day, Connell actually kisses Marianne in the library, and Marianne promises not to tell anyone, and then they begin their illicit affair. Illicit because they're not supposed to tell anyone, and it's supposed to be secret. So they start their little affair, and both of them can really confide in each other and can really talk to each other in a way that they can't with other people. And they have this sort of innate bond between them, like, that goes beyond just sex. Raising money for a prom, I think, of sorts, which is the Debs. And so Marianne dresses to the nines, goes to the nightclub to sell raffle tickets. And while she's doing that, she gets molested. Yes, she gets molested by this dude. And then Connell is comforting her, which thank you for doing. Like, yes, comfort the girl. And while he's doing that, he tells her that he loves her and it's sincere and it's true, and you know it's true, but it's a sweet moment that doesn't last, because the next day he goes into like a maddening panic over saying that, because I think he just hasn't said it to another girl before, and this is his first experience doing so, and he didn't know he had these feelings, so it must be confusing for him. And that's not to excuse his behavior after this, but you have to understand when someone's first time doing something, you have to afford them a little grace. So in his panic, what Connell does is he asks Rachel out to the prom instead of Marianne. And this prompts Marianne to not go back to school again except to sit for her exams. My most iconic part for this was Lorraine. The way Lorraine is such a good parent, like she really gives Connell a dressing down for his behavior, because she did not raise him to be that way, and she calls him a disgrace for doing that to Marianne. The tides turn in college when Marianne becomes the popular one and Connell is more so outcasted. And I think that's because he doesn't give in to pretension like all the other kids there do. And you know, it seemed like in the university there were a lot of wealthy kids, and Connell just didn't fit into that atmosphere at all. Connell and Marianne start a serious sort of relationship, but Connell dumps Marianne after 3 months, and then we get to know why. What happened is Connell gets let go from his work, unfortunately, because they're expanding or some shit like that, and that because of that he can't pay his rent, so he can't stay on campus anymore. So he wanted to ask Marianne whether he could move in with her, because he's been living there for like 3 months already, so why not ask her? But instead of asking her, there's so much miscommunication in this scene, and he ends up breaking up with her, and she feels like a proper fool because she's introduced him to all her friends, he's drank her beer, he stayed with her for 3 months, and then left her out to dry like a fool. After meeting back in their hometown, they resume their friendship, Connell and Mary. And in a casual conversation between Connell and Marianne, Marianne says that her boyfriend likes to beat her while they're having sex. I didn't think the book was going in this direction. It was like a big moment for me. It really took me out of my skin when I first read it. I'm sure it's gonna be the same experience for all of you. You're gonna read it and you're gonna be like, what? I didn't expect that to be there. It's honestly one of those scenes where you're like, oh, we accept the love we think we deserve. And Marianne does that. During Christmas, she goes back for Christmas holidays in her hometown, and while she's there, her brother spits on her and Dennis smacks her. And this reveals a less than ideal home life, and you can really see the toll it takes on Marianne by her choices in her boyfriends moving forward, and how she lets them treat her, and how she repeatedly says to them that you can do whatever you like to me, because people have been doing whatever they like to her all when she was growing up. The deep dive into her psychology that you can really do is quite vast, to be honest. Like, you could really pick apart a lot of her decisions if you look at her home life. In a separate turn of events, Connell starts dating Helen, and this time he says I love you without panicking and without ruining it. I'm not going to talk about the Sweden part of this novel, because honestly that really upset me, of how Marianne is treated by her boyfriend Lucas. I just don't want to talk about it. I just want to say that her coat in Sweden was major envy. Like, I have major envy regarding that. Connell's friend Rob commits suicide, and because of that, Connell falls into this deep, deep depression, and his friend Niall urges him to get help. Thank God for friends like that. And then he finally goes to a free counseling session provided by his school, and then he gets the help he needs, which is so nice to see men getting help for their mental health issues. It was really nice to see. The ending completely killed me when Marianne is urging Connell to go to New York to pursue his writing career. It really shows how much they care for each other. And that was the book. Now we're gonna move on to the show. The show opens up with Marianne telling a teacher off and then getting detention because of it, because what did you expect? If you mouth off to a teacher, you get detention. And all her classmates are not on her side, except instead they're on the teacher's side, which really shows her social standing in this place called school. You know that rumor scene in the book where she takes her shirt off supposedly in the bathroom to wipe off the yogurt stain? They actually show it in the show, and it was actually a really nice scene to see, even though it was just alluded to in the book and not confirmed. In the series, it does become confirmed. Rachel is still pining after Connell, and we can see in a scene the uncomfortable amount of attention this teacher is giving Connell. Predator! Unlike Conversations with Friends, this show didn't have any awkward pauses, I thought, and it flowed really well. Not to shit on that show any further. It's for someone, I'm sure, just not for me. By episode 2, Connell reveals that he would be upset if Marianne stopped talking to him, and that shows like a really heartwarming moment between the two of them. When Connell says I love you to Marianne, though, we can see the palpable panic in him, and it was like portrayed very nicely on screen. You could see how much he panicked when he asked Rachel to Debs, and how distraught he was when Marianne wasn't answering his phone calls afterwards. Lorraine, being the G that she is, she comes to Connell and says that's great what she's doing, because she honestly deserved so much better than you. And then Marianne doesn't go back to school. Instead, she only goes back to sit for her exams, and she ignores Connell throughout. They meet back in college, and Marianne, the outfit, the boots, the earrings, everything was on point. She's a cool girl for sure. They start their relationship, and you know when he's gonna break up with her, you can actually see the winding up to that moment and how distraught he was and why that miscommunication happened. And you can't help but want to scream through the scene and go into the TV screen. You just want Connell to shut the fuck up and ask Marianne whether he could stay for some time. Like, how hard is that? Something so grand and long-standing breaks down between them in that moment. You can feel the weight of the scene on your shoulders, for sure. The scene where his old teacher is on him like a slug is so disgusting to watch. I was like, what is that? That was so uncomfortable and so unnecessary. Like, it's not unnecessary because there are people like that out there. And I have a few stories to tell from high school about teachers like that, but honestly, like, seeing it is so gross. Marianne and Connell run into each other in Sligo when Marianne is there for her father's funeral anniversary. I think it's called funeral mass anniversary, and they resume their friendship there. There is a scene where Connell and Marianne are both being awarded a scholarship, and honestly that scene was so emotional for me because you know how much it meant to Connell, how he could get accommodations for free and move back in, and then not have to worry about his day-to-day anymore. It was so sweet to see. When they discuss their breakup, it's such a heartbreaking scene to watch because both of them are crying, both of them are emotional, both of them acknowledge that there was miscommunication that happened. And to know that they let something like that slip away was really heartbreaking to watch, and it was heartbreaking for them as well. The discourse about money is quite interesting. When they're vacationing in Italy, they talk about it. But I thought it could be talked about more, especially since Connell is from a lower income family and Marianne is from a higher income family. I think they could talk about their struggles a little more, but I think the show did a good job showing a lot of the struggles that Connell had and how much the scholarship actually meant to him. But I think it would be more effective if they could just talk about how people with money and people without money move in the world and how different that is. One scene that I thought was absolutely crucial from book to screen was when Jamie breaks one of Marianne's father's glasses and Marianne lunges at him and Connell has to literally hold her back. It was so dramatic and theatrically played on screen that it was an amazing moment in television to watch. Soon after, we have a scene where Alan, Marianne's brother, throws a beer bottle at her, missing her by an inch, and then slams a door in her face and her nose breaks, and she calls Connell to ask for help, and Connell comes there and, like he should, gives Alan a dressing down and tells him that if he ever speaks to Marianne poorly or hurts her again, that he's going to kill him, which is Team Connell, go Connell. Connell and Marianne's conversation about New York is filled with nuance, and it's filled with sorrow, and it's filled with happiness because they're two people who care so selflessly towards each other that they just want them to succeed and go forward in life. It was so pleasant to see, and it was so heartbreaking to watch as well. Talk about the series and the book. Both of them were great in the fact that they portrayed Marianne and Connell being a constant in each other's lives so aptly and so properly that you could really either watch the book, either read the book or watch the series. Like, it wouldn't matter. You would still get, I think, the same amount of joy. But if you are a reader who enjoys like good writing, then I would definitely ask you to read the book instead. But you can do both if you want, but I don't think that's really necessary. Thank you so much for watching my video and interacting with it. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you very soon in the next video. Thank you. Bye.